Hi, folks. This is Louis Herthum, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld Edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece for the hit HBO series Westworld. I am one of your hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me is one of my co-hosts, Gene Lyons.
Aren't you concerned I'll smash all my toys and go home?
And this is our Westworld fan email episode where we look back on this month's news, notes, and emails and provide our feedback in a little segment we like to call the Westworld Telegraph. Gene, it is April 2017. As we promised the audience, we said that we would, in the off season, in the year and a half, the 18 months between season 1 and season 2, we would continue with a podcast dedicated monthly to fan emails, news and notes of Westworld. What do we have in store this month?
Yeah, I feel like we're the Bone Thugs in Harmony of podcasts here, where it's like, I feel like I'm messaging you and Dick, like, wake up, it's the first of the month, and that means it's time for the Telegraph. We've got some great ones this time. Again, the cadence has slowed down a little bit, but we're getting really inventive stuff. People have tightened up their writing, too. We're not getting like the 3 or 4 page missives that we normally get, but we've got some discussion about what the mainland will look like, how we can allow people to reach us in other ways. I guess some people don't want to write and they like voicemail, so we're considering that. Some ideas on the humanity of androids, and kind of a fun one that's in honor of March Madness. So a lot of different takes on this one, some old faces and some new. So I'm excited about these 5 that we're going to be reading. Plus, some of the news that you just hit me with was really exciting.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, Gene, is that we have been doing this for months now. We started off with Westworld. We were doing this 3 times a week. Then we dovetailed that into Taboo, which was shortly thereafter Westworld. Taboo has ended. We're waiting on American Gods, and then we're going to do Game of Thrones. We do this podcast, though, for Westworld once a month. I feel a little out of shape right now. I feel like if you only go to the gym once a month, you're not going to increase your bench reps.
Yeah, I've got total off-season dad bod when it comes to podcasting right now. I found that the cadence of the podcast actually was determining the way I could tell time. Like, my weeks were determined by how often we were recording, and now weeks seem to drag on, and I lose track of what month it is. It's really weird, and it's only been, a couple weeks that we've had off, and and Dick thankfully is on our asses about, well, we got to do stuff in the off season. So some of the stuff that we're working on right now, working on a newsletter that we'll send out for all of the Shat properties together, so you can kind of keep track of what's coming up and what's been happening, stuff you might have missed, and working on some other inventions to improve the show. So we are at work, but it's nothing like, we are definitely out of shape. But we're gonna have to get it together before American Gods.
Yeah. This once a month Shat the movies, this once a week Shat the movies, and the once a month Westworld just has me. I feel doughy. I feel like my voice isn't in top form. That might have to do with something with the high altitude. Right now, I'm recording this in Denver. And we only have you and I. Dick is, gallivanting with, people from Sweden right now. So this is the total off season right now. So, we need to inject some steroids and get back into season shape if, we expect to be, the number 1 Westworld podcast in October 2018. So, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Hope you subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found, and you follow us everywhere on social media. Let's start with some news and updates. Gene, the first big one that I want to talk about is Louis Herthum promoted to a regular for season 2. This is huge news.
I think you called it early on when they put him into cold storage, and we saw Abernathy go into cold storage and thought, there's no way they can take a guy with this much talent, with this much draw on the screen, who endeared so many people so quickly in basically just one episode, and just throw him away and not use him again. So I was overjoyed when I heard this news. Just such a delightful guy, total professional, and was, our first real friend from the show that kind of befriended the podcast. So yeah, I couldn't be happier for him.
The thing that I love about Louis Herthum is that you love him from Westworld and you look back and you look at series like Longmire, but then he's also in these other shows like Narcos, True Detective, Treme, Breaking Bad, The Last Exorcism. You look at him and you're like, oh my God, like he is the person that I've been waiting for. He's always been there, but I never noticed. Does that make sense? He's like the nerd girl in every like coming of age movie that you're like, oh, you never noticed her before, but then they took off their glasses and they're gorgeous.
Yeah, I think they really gave him a character that he could really work with. And this speaks to the volumes for the depth of Westworld and what they are accomplishing here. We said it from the beginning that this is an actor's paradise. From having, different characters alternate between modes as they are hosts, to having people convert from being, what we would consider hero to villain. We've seen the development here. And with Louis Herthum, they had the ability to have that breakdown and to have those conflicting roles of the loving father, but also following the protocol and all that he's endured through the show. It really gave him a lot of room to work and to spread his wings. And so you can see hints of that on those earlier performances. And when I did see him on screen, he looked familiar, but like you said, I couldn't really place it. And then once I realized, he's been in so many other shows that I absolutely love, from True Detective, Treme I love, even though no one else likes it, and Breaking Bad, which is a favorite of yours, mine, and Dick. So it's really cool.
Absolutely. Well, another character actor that was on the series that, was in the background, but she had some really pivotal scenes, has also been promoted to a regular for season 2, Talulah Riley. She, of course, was in the famous scene with Jimmi Simpson as she's like the host welcoming him to Westworld for the first time. She's been promoted to a regular for season 2. What do you think about this?
Yeah, Angela was a character that intrigued a lot of people late in the season. People were asking, if we were overlooking her, if she wasn't really the truly conscious one among the hosts. Everyone was focused on Dolores, and they said, and Maeve, and people seem to overlook Angela. And a lot of people who wrote in to the Telegraph were very conscious of Angela, and I think were very intrigued about where her character will go next. So I think that, again, having her come back, and what's interesting about that too is she had a presence on a lot of episodes in season 1, but wasn't really considered a major character by the casual viewer. So very keen eyes on the people who were watching and paying attention and noticing that she was in a lot of major scenes and had a lot of screen time on key episodes.
Yeah, so we just talked about Talulah Riley being promoted to a regular for season 2. Obviously, Louis Herthum. We're both very excited about those characters. The one character that was the focal point of season 1 recently was interviewed and said that he will most likely not be returning for season 2, but possibly could be returning in future season, is Jimmi Simpson, the young William. What do you think about this?
Jimmi Simpson, I think he's a good actor. I actually liked him better in Always Sunny, but he was also very good in Westworld. I think he did an excellent job with William, and I think this just gives us a sense of the direction here. If you're thinking, moving forward in time, we know Louis Herthum, he is what we would call the present day Westworld. Angela is also available at present day. And really this tells us that, since we also suspect and have been told that Ed Harris will be back, this just indicates that we're going forward in time, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I posted this on our social media sites on Facebook and Twitter, and you can follow us on Shat the Movies. I'm sorry, Shat on TV. You can also follow us on Shat the Movies, but Shat on TV for Westworld News. But I posted this article that said Jimmi Simpson will most likely not be returning for season 2. Most people are okay with this. It recently came out, the creators, Jonah and Lisa Joy, and most of the cast of Westworld were part of Paley Fest. And they had mentioned that Westworld in season 2 will take a giant leap forward in time in narrative a la Lost, where they're not going to pick off exactly where they left off in season 1, where the revolt of the robots are rising. They just killed off the board and they just shot, the old man, Ed Harris. What do you think about this idea of taking the narrative forward, not just moments after, but like maybe months or even years after season 1 ended?
This is true to the style of the show. In episode 10 of season 1, we're in the finale. We got very straightforward linear storytelling, and that's a good way to wrap up a season. But that's not the style of Westworld. Westworld brought us into a world with multiple time frames, with some mysteries abound, and jumped around a lot and told the story with that way. We've talked about it before with Pulp Fiction on Shat the Movies, how that is an artistic decision, and a show or a movie does not operate the same if you put it in a linear fashion. It's not as effective. So in this, I love this. People are asking, what are we going to see next? And if they just picked up right at the right post massacre with the man in black standing right there, it would feel like a really weird reason to take 2 years off. And essentially, this is really great because for us, it's going to feel like a long time again. So it's going to be disjointed no matter what. And I can't wait to see where we do pick up.
Well, during the whole Paley Fest with Jonathan Nolan, Lisa Joy, and the cast and crew, and one of the executive producers, there's some other topics that were discussed during that conversation that I did want to talk about and kind of highlight here and get your opinion of. The first of the fact that when Maeve, played by Thandie Newton, is getting on the train to leave towards the mainland, then gets off the train, we had discussed at great lengths of whether or not that was in fact her coming, reaching her sentience, right? Coming to the realization that she was a robot and now going off script. Everything leading up to that point, though, we had determined that was on script. Well, the showrunners, Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, did finally confirm that that was in fact what they had intended, that everything up until that fact was programmed by Dr. Ford. And then when she gets off the train, when she sees the little dog, when she's the mother and the child, that's when she realizes that she's sentient. We had a lot of emails going back and forth, but most of us seem to get that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Raj, they were pretty clear about it. Several people pointed to, I think you did as well, pointed to the fact that when she was, they had the tablet there, the tablet revealed what her protocol was, and she disobeyed that protocol. To me, that's an open and shut case that she's got sentience, that she didn't want to know what she was supposed to do, was not told what she was supposed to do, and didn't do what she was supposed to do. So I think that was, it's nice that they gave the confirmation. Honestly, they could have just copped out and said, well, what do you think? Or something like that. So it's cool that they went that way. And honestly, that it helps clear some things up. For the viewer who is at home and wants to think the way that, differently, that's fine. You can never say 100%. I mean, that might have been the twist, right? It was that, we were being thrown off by the tablet and whatever. But yeah, look, it's, I think the season's over. We can now answer questions about it. And I think the majority of people got that.
Yeah. Well, some of the other, previews for season 2 were confirmed by the showrunners. They did confirm that the player piano will return with even creepier adaptations of modern day music. What do you think about this?
Very excited about this. I think maybe they listen to the podcast and understand that old Gene Lyons has not been happy with the poppy adaptations of modern day music, wants something a little creepier. So maybe they'll switch the player piano to a pipe organ a la Organ Stop Pizza. If you don't know what Organ Stop Pizza is, you don't live in Arizona. That's okay.
And the last thing they talked about were the fan theories and how a lot of the fans on Reddit, message boards, review podcast, God, there were so many of them throughout the season, about how the fan theories did predict a lot of things that came throughout the episode. They said that, that kind of drives them crazy being storytellers, but they're still game for it. Even in season 2, they're quoted as saying it's annoying sometimes when people guess the twist and then blog about it after you spend 2 years working on a project meant to, keep people guessing. But it's gratifying on one level, because if someone guesses your twist, it means you've done an adequate job of laying the tracks for it. But he is, however, still not a big believer of the rug pull a la M. Night Shyamalan. What do you think about this? Do you still think the fan theories will continue in season 2?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, okay, look, so growing up, I had this friend, Seth, and we're still friends today, but Seth would, if I was setting up a joke or about to tell a story and I have an audience of 4 or 5 people, he would just ruin it. He would just blurt out what was going to happen or something like that. And I imagine for the show, I mean, could you imagine having a conversation with 1 million or 2 million people who are completely gripped in your tale, and some asshole in the back's like, then what if and like ruins like the whole thing, and is 90% of the time wrong, but sometimes nails it, So I can see the frustration. At the same time, look, shame on you you got a show that's a bunch of mysteries strung together. What do you want people to do? I would say that the majority of the viewership on the show is watching not simply to, but very much to guess what's going to happen next. The show is a mystery.
Completely agree. I mean, I think that's part of the fun of the show. I mean, it's along the same lines of Lost. I think people enjoy talking about it. I'm glad to hear Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy say that is not their main focus. That's not why they created the show. He's not a fan of creating twists just to create twists, because I think if you go down that line, you're going to M. Night Shyamalan this shit, and you're going to end up with The Fucking Happening, where trees are attacking people because they're mad at the world.
Spoiler alert.
That's all of our news, our notes. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we turn on the Telegraph and get to our fan email? Gene.
Nah, man, let's rock and roll.
Turn on the Telegraph. All right, our first Westworld Telegraph email comes in from Nick B. Nick B writes, "Gents, there's been a lot of speculation about what would happen when the mainland finds out about the host uprising/revolution. Will there be a military invasion of the park? Will there be a public uproar? Will there be a cover-up? All of these questions have been addressed in one way or another, but I then started to ask myself another question. Will anyone care? Think about Westworld, the park. It is a place where you can find yourself by living out your wildest fantasies and do anything your forebrain desires. It is the place where possibilities are limitless. Your desires become a reality and all of your dreams come true for approximately $42,000 a day. For that amount of money, I can only assume that the average or even the above average citizen would be priced out of ever considering a trip to the park. Would reports of unrest and violence at the park survive even one news cycle? Or would it fail to gain traction because most people don't care what happens to the 1% at their elite country clubs, estates, parties, or parks? I think we make a mistake in comparing the park to Disney World or land, where the average citizen could save enough to visit once or even multiple times over a lifetime. Westworld seems to be prohibitively expensive and something only the elite could afford without excessive subsidies, which makes it unattainable to most individuals. So what are your thoughts? Can the uprising hold the attention of the public long enough for an intervention to occur? Or will the inability of the average person to afford the park be the reason that the uprising will be easily hushed in season 2? This could go a lot of ways, but I would love to hear what you guys think about the public opinion of the park on the mainland. Thanks. And of course, this comes from Nick B. Gene, your thoughts?
Yeah, Nick, I like this idea in the sense that it's an angle we hadn't thought of before. Would anyone care? It's a question that no one's asked. I think they would. Historically, if you look back to the Titanic, if you look back to royalty, the elites, what happens to them is magnified. It's even more interesting to people. In this case, we've got a board, actually, so that may not be as intriguing. But a bigger question we could ask, if we want to take it that far, is this far into the future, does the news cycle mean anything? Do people give a shit? We haven't really established that. The only notion of news I think we even got was the Man in Black is known as a titan of industry, as a philanthropist of sorts, and people know of him, so he's got some notoriety or fame. But that might have been corporate branding. That might have been a lot of other things. So really, I think it's a great question, Nick. Even if it's not a matter of people not caring about the elite, maybe it's just a situation where news doesn't spread the way we consider news to spread.
All right, well, let's think about this. All right, so I want to throw a couple things out to you, Gene. You tell me what you think about this. So, what's a multinational corporation out there that, seems very elitist? Like, if you were to take the entire board of a multinational corporation out there, what comes to your mind immediately?
Like Lehman Brothers?
Not Lehman Brothers, but maybe what about a Mobil Exxon?
Okay,
right. Let's say they're all out golfing at Augusta or some shit like that. I don't know what rich people do. Let's say they're at they're at a plantation wedding somewhere in South Carolina, and everyone dies. How many times do you think this makes CNN? this story? How many times do you think they talk about all the board members of ExxonMobil died at a golf tournament right after they had a plantation wedding in South Carolina?
I guess even if it is a news story that makes it to the news cycle, I don't think a lot of people would care. I mean, I wouldn't care. It's not sexy enough, right? They're not famous.
Let's say it's not the ExxonMobil. Let's say it's the Kardashians. Let's say the Kardashians are out. I don't know. What did the Kardashians do? They're at a spa, and they all die from butt injections. What do you think happens? Does that make the news cycle?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That does. I mean, that's a never ending. Oh, I almost said never ending story, but no, but it's, first of all, I think we're revealing how little we know about money at this point, but also, I think that, and relating to normal people.
That's right.
Quick, Raj, say something people know about. I don't know, Kardashians, but butt injections. But no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that would be a much bigger story. People would give a shit about that.
How many times do you think the average person, just the average blue collar worker in America, the average person who has a family and maybe a couple kids, how many times do you think they've ever been to like Las Vegas?
Well, come on. That's a terrible example. Las Vegas, lots of times.
You think so?
Oh yeah. Las Vegas is where poor people go to have fun.
So this is, I think what Nick B is trying to say is that this is a park that is extremely elite, right? And so, I mean, I guess unless you're like an Alex Jones type individual, or you're, someone who's a big conspiracy theorist who has a podcast, out of his mom's basement while you eat chicken tenders. I kind of tend to agree with Nick. I don't know how much of a news cycle this would necessarily pick up, especially by mainstream news who, consumes and throws away news stories at the flip of a hat, unless it's the Kardashian story about butt injections.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
So we got a double header from Nick B.
Oh, that's right.
He's hitting us. He's bringing the fire this month.
Nick B also writes in. He says, "Gents, do you think Dr. Ford, could have used his predictive analytics, to win the Westworld office pool for the NCAA tournament bracket?" Of course, the NCAA tournament, I think it just ended and North Carolina won. Spoiler alert, if you have that DVR'd. It seems like his ability to predict the future was limitless when tying together his elaborate plots. So I would assume it would be the child's play for him to plug the data into a system and predict a perfect bracket. I am being a little tongue-in-cheek here given this timely nature of this question, but I think it would be a real mark of his predictive analytics if he was able to predict the perfect NCAA bracket. I don't think any one person or machine has ever been able to accurately predict the entire bracket because there are too many factors involved. What do you guys think? Thanks for keeping at this. And again, that comes from our boy Nick B.
It's interesting that NCAA bracket, when you look at it on its face, you go, okay, look, there's 32 teams? Is that right?
No, it's 64 teams.
Yeah.
And there's two play-in, I believe.
Yeah. So essentially you're looking at that, you go, that shouldn't be that hard to predict. But when you get down to it, I mean, I've done a bracket every year for as long as I can remember and never gotten even close to being right. Ford has, as we've discussed before with Westworld, he was involved in the genesis of this world and therefore has a lot of control over the rules. And when you have control over the rules, it's much easier to predict what's going on. Could Ford nail it? Possibly, but I think it's more likely that Ford doesn't even know anything about basketball and probably wouldn't be able to, unless the kids are all hosts.
Right. I think it would require, yeah, like you said, like most of the teams who are participating in this amateur basketball tournament, they would all have to be some sort of Ford creations, right? They would all have to be hosts. And then he would have some sort of control of them. I mean, let's say this, of Ford, Bernard, is it Teresa? Who was the board representative that came in right at the end?
Oh, Charlotte.
Okay. So you have Charlotte Hale. You have Charlotte. You have the woman that's Stupping Bernard. Who is that? God, we're so out of shape.
That was Teresa Cullen.
Oh, that was Teresa Cullen. Okay, so you have Teresa Cullen, you have Charlotte Hale, you have who's the British guy that no one likes that he pees on tables? Who is that guy? Sizemore, that's right. Yeah, so you have Sizemore, you have Teresa Cullen, you have Charlotte Hale, you have Man in Black. Of all of them, who is winning out of that? I think that's the real question that Nick is trying to say. Because that's the office pool. Who's probably winning?
I want Sizemore to win because he's the only one that's going to put ASU in the championship game. So that's what I'm going for. But no, I think out of those, I mean, obviously, you're going to have Ford be he's the master manipulator. He's the guy who, I mean, look, we talked about it before, but the way that he somehow predicted all the events that were going to lead to Dolores and Teddy being on the beach with the audience right there, with the Men in Black fight and wounding and all that stuff. If he can do that, again, the bracket should be easy.
My mom always wins the family bracket because she knows nothing about basketball. Fantasy NCAA basketball tournament brackets, they're just like fantasy baseball or football. The less you know, the better off you are in terms of winning. Does that make sense? Like, I don't think you have to have, like, it's the people who have, like, swear by, they've got a predictive analytics model that's fail safe. They're the ones that, the bracket is busted after the first two games. It's the ones who pick Gonzaga because they like Bulldogs, the ones that are going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. When I knew very little about college basketball is when I actually had the best brackets. Now they're just a disaster because I overthink it.
Nick, I don't know if that answers your questions, but I'm going to say your old buddy Raj here is going to say that the less of predictive analytics that you know, the better off you're going to do in NCAA brackets. So take that for what you will. The next, is this Nick B again?
Guess who's back? It's Nick B with a three-peat.
So Nick...
We're actually hiring him as a show writer for the rest of Shat on TV. He's just going to write all of our scripts.
Yeah. All right. So this is not a pseudonym. Dick is not ghostwriting under Nick B, is he?
That would be great if he just changed one letter. No, I'm not Dick. I'm Nick. Ebert.
All right. Nick B writes in, he says, "Gents, is there a way to call and leave theories, ideas, or questions for the Telegraph? I spend a lot of time on the road thinking about Westworld."
That's amazing, Nick. I love it.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be laughing at Nick. I'm imagining Dick Ebert like writing this stuff in.
To me, it was more just the image of Nick as like a crossroad trucker, and he's just spending like the danger of thinking about Westworld while driving across Oklahoma.
All right. Get it together, Raj. All right. So he says, and when I find an idea that hits me, I just have to get it to the Telegraph. The problem I have found though is that the driving is dangerous while texting. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm crying right now. All right. So it's dangerous than texting and driving and composing emails and driving, right? So those are very bad things. We don't encourage this on Shat on TV. It says you three don't have to man the phone lines. Rather, just set up a phone number that we could leave messages on, kind of like Bruce Willis leaving messages for the future in 12 Monkeys. I'm sure many of them will sound like ramblings of a madman or maybe a woman too. As always, thanks for trucking on and doing the monthly installment, Nick. And then he gives us a couple suggestions. He says Gmail or Skype can do free voicemails with a free number. So, what do you think of this idea? I think Nick is a truck driver.
Yeah, I think he's trying to give us a hint there, a little wordplay. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. It would allow us to play some of the listeners' voices on the podcast, which would be kind of cool hearing what people sound like. Also, it would save if people are busy and driving. We don't want them to die, so that would be helpful as well. I have a Google Voice number that I use from back in the day, actually, in my news reporting days, where I could record conversations with people. but it's very easy to have one set up just for basically for voicemail. So I think that's a great idea. It's something that I'd like to get on. If we get Dick's permission, who might just be Nick writing to us, then we can go ahead and get that going. But Nick, we want you to stay safe on the road. I know that truckers were represented at the White House recently, and you're the pride of the nation. So we will take care of that. We'll let you know.
Yeah, my father is a trucker. In fact, Gene just met my father in person. We went and we did the what did we do? We went and saw the Game of Thrones. That's what my dad is driving for the Game of Thrones concert that just crossed North America, and you got to meet him in person.
Yeah, he is nothing like I imagined. He is super cool, like Harley shirt wearing, ponytail having. He's got a nice little twang in his accent. Really cool guy. And yeah, not at all. I imagined, I don't know what I imagined some big, soft, like just overly kind, sensitive man. And he was talking about points of rigging and El Caminos and motorcycling. And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, are you sure you're not my dad?
That's right. All right, Nick B, thank you for the 3 emails this month. We really appreciate it. Please keep them right in, or possibly once we set up the voicemail, we want you to call in and leave a voicemail. So thanks so much. Our next, I almost said River Rant. It's the Westworld Telegraph. Westworld Telegraph email comes in from Emma. Emma writes in, hello, Shat on TV crew. It's Emma from Melbourne, Australia, another one of your international listeners. This email isn't really about theory, more about the ideas the show suggests. What are your opinions on the idea that the intense suffering is the trigger that makes the host reach consciousness? And do you believe that a host's level of consciousness is equivalent to a human's? Humans are not equivalent to the hosts that have reached consciousness. The host's experience is very different from humans. They have much larger brain capacity than we do. For example, Trump equals 1 bit, you and me equals 1,000 terabytes, and hosts equal I don't know what this number is, but it's pretty close to infinity. And she says this is very accurate. And number 3, what does this suggest then about consciousness? We only really understand in a human sense. Can we apply that then to hosts, which may be an alien species? We may often talk about how, when, and if we meet aliens, will they have a completely different method of interpretation and communication? While the hosts were designed with the human condition in mind, they clearly see themselves as different to us. And some of the unique traits of the host must provide them with a different experience of the world than humans. The knowledge that you can't die is certainly one that humans all hold, which is ever present throughout life, that we will die. But this is not the case for the host. Similarly, the process of aging does not happen to the hosts as long as they are maintained, and surely this must have a similar effect. This is something we can't comprehend because all life on Earth dies and ages, but the hosts are not limited by this. What do you think about this? Let's break this down.
Yeah, I feel like Nick wrote us 1 email in 3 parts, and this one we got 3 emails all put together. So let's get down to this, Emma. What I highlighted out of this email, what really struck me was this idea, first of all, of the intelligence of the hosts. I don't believe that it's as extreme as we think as far as their storage capacity. One of the things that they talk about is they said that, the host's brain is able to hold more information than all the servers that they have at Westworld. Well, that makes sense because the human brain itself has the capability to hold an incredible density of information. If you think about how much our memory records in a lifetime, if you try to quantify that in data, it is massive. And so they're not necessarily that much more capable of storage than we are. It's just more that they can really partition and allocate and make it, they have crystal clear memory, that they have no trace decay, as it were, right? So in that sense, I would say that their consciousness, their intelligence is, as far as brain capacity goes, is roughly the same, although they can be cranked up like we saw with Maeve. And so there is that possibility. But I don't think that's a remarkable difference in their perception of the world unless they are actually cranked up and enhanced. As far as the suffering part goes, that's a little bit different. I think that, again, I don't believe in that supposition that the show made that somehow suffering was the cornerstone to being real. although that does jive with most of the literature I adore, I would say that that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I'm very real. I think I'm a very conscious person. I haven't suffered a ton. How about you, Raj?
Last month, though, we got a really big email from Gillian, who made some really good points that your cornerstones are made up of events that transpire in your life. That's what makes up who you are as a person. All of your experiences, whether or not you lived a privileged life or you lived a hardship life, those experiences that you've lived create the foundation of who you are. And I think the same can be said for the robots in Westworld, or at least that's what the engineers and narrative people like Bernard and Dr. Ford strive for, because I think that's what makes us human.
I'm glad you brought up narrative, Raj, with regards to their consciousness and their aging. Emma points out that they don't age. They know they're not going to die. And so therefore that separates them from us as a species. I agree that they are, it's a great observation to note that they are something alien, but they're not entirely alien, because like it or not, conscious or not, every single one of these hosts has a backstory that's been uploaded into him or her, and that makes them, in a sense, human. They remember their life up until that point. They don't consider themselves anything different in the sense of memory. Their memories are present, and they have a backstory which is necessary to make that reality. So even though they know they're not going to die, they still have that impulse of what death is. Even though that they were never born, they still have that impulse of what it is to grow up. So they are something, although alien, also familiar. So it's a really, really interesting take on it. I love that you brought that up.
Even though that these are very highly advanced robots, I think it's easier for us humans to relate with them than it is. I mean, shoot, I still want to hug the Showbiz Pizza Bear, because he's anamorphic and he looks like a big country uncle that would have fun with me during summers.
So 2 legs good, 7 legs bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Is what you're saying. Raj identifies more with robotics than Portuguese, I think is where we're going with this.
Thank you so much, Emma, for writing in. Our final Westworld Telegraph for April of 2017 comes in all the way from Tanya P. Tanya P writes, as I'm waiting for the second season of Westworld for 2 years, it's upsetting, no doubt, but if this new season is as fantastic as the first one, I don't mind. Westworld is one of the best shows of the last decade. A couple of years ago, I quit watching television shows because doing so started to feel like too much of a waste of time. There was no intellectual challenge in TV these days, no risk, no emotional provocation, and everybody looks too typical and groomed. Westworld was a breath of fresh air for me. It's the way I want all my art to be. So yes, 2 years of longing, bring it on. A separate thank you to Gene for his fantastic piece on Zilpha. I agree with every line. Thank you ever so much for your great content and your awesome personalities. This comes from Tanya from Tokyo. P.S. In my mind, Big D is the wise one, like one of those elder wizards who can do the most powerful magic. Gene is a spicy erudite. I melt every time he mentions a book I've read or makes an allusion to a literary character. The love for literary fiction is so rare in men. And Roger is like Mercury, as in the god with flying shoes. He holds the seams of the episodes and puts a lot of energy into making them as smooth and entertaining as possible. And that's a lot of work. Tanya from Tokyo. What do you think about this?
I feel like Tanya just described, if they were going to do like a Led Zeppelin style tapestry of our podcast, I think this would be wonderful. I think it works out really well. But getting back into into what she wrote about here, Westworld is comparing it to Game of Thrones. I think feels unfair because they operate on such different levels. Game of Thrones is a fairly flat narrative, but man, is it well done and exciting. Westworld's very complex, many layers, and much, I think, harder to execute to make it really matter. It's everything is done in the details, whereas Game of Thrones is done on a grand scale. When you and I were at the Game of Thrones concert, watching that, it just occurred to me how huge the scale of that show is, right. And Westworld happens essentially in a couple little towns.
When you look at the Game of Thrones, they have worlds to explore. Well, if Winterfell gets a little too boring, let's go see what's happening down in King's Landing, right? In this particular case, there's not Samurai World was just a throw-in, right? I don't think they're going to explore extra worlds. I think they're going to keep in this concentrated space, and it becomes very difficult to do that. There's a lot of shows that had a very similar approach to storytelling, Lost being the most obvious one, where the showrunners got confused. They didn't know where they wanted to go. And then so they started creating weird things. You know, some people left off the island. There were other people. The island fucking moved. Listen, if Westworld moves, I'm fucking turning off the show. Like I'm quitting the podcast.
So Tanya, one interesting thing though to really think about, and I encourage you to really sit down and ponder this one though, and something that's struck me in the last few weeks. I've gained more of an appreciation for Westworld since it ended, in the sense that I really got to think about it, digest it, compare it to other shows that we've done. One of the side effects of doing this podcast for movies and TV is we can't watch TV or movies with the same childhood innocence as we used to. I watched Arrival the other night, and literally I started taking notes and then realized I don't have to. I can just watch the movie. But one of the things to think about is with Game of Thrones, because we've never done that before and we do plan to do it this summer, is think about the emotional attachment you have to Game of Thrones character, the rage, the sorrow, the hatred that you feel toward them, and then compare that to the way you think about Westworld. Now, Westworld, it's very intriguing. It's intellectually exercising. There's emotional provocation. All that stuff is there. All the stuff that you mentioned, what sets it apart from the rest of television. But is it anywhere near Game of Thrones, what they're doing from an emotional impact? For me, no. I mean, I legitimately have feelings for almost every major character in Game of Thrones, negative or positive.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel for characters in Westworld, certainly. I mean, Lewis Herthum being, a major one. I'm glad he's coming back. I felt for Dr. Ford. I think there's a level of emotional response that you have for characters, especially Evan Rachel Wood when she's discovering who she is. And I think that they did an effective job of that. So, I'm hopeful for season 2. I think they're going to rock it. And, for as much as they compare to shows like Game of Thrones, I think Westworld stands alone on its own. And certainly, hopefully we can keep, as you pointed out, the fun, podcast for you, Tanya. We certainly thank you for coming along and all of you, for this ride with us. That concludes. That's all the emails for this month, Gene. Really good ones. 3 from Nick B, possibly Dick Ebert, and 2 from some other ones. So if you want to get involved in this, if you want to send us emails, you can do that by sending us at hosts@shatontv.com. If we end up having a voicemail, we'll certainly put that across all of our social media outlets, and you can do it that way. But otherwise, that concludes this week's of Shat on TV Westworld. However, we will be continuing on with American Gods, which debuts later this month on April 30th, as well as the monthly Westworld Telegraph on every first of the month. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, @Shat on TV, Facebook. Just search for Shat on TV podcasts. Our website is shatontv.com. You can find all of the raw, unfiltered, untruncated emails that we receive from our fans. Just search for Westworld Telegraph on the website. You can see it all there. Join the conversation. There's a comment section that you can do that. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. If you stop by iTunes, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. Finally, if you like Shat on TV, check out our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we review the best 80s and 90s movies from our childhood that you, the audience, vote for. You can check all that information out at shatthemovies.com. Is there anything else we want to talk about Westworld before we shut down this month's Telegraph and get ready for May?
Nothing else about Westworld, but with American Gods coming up on the horizon, it'll be upon us before we even know it. It's about less than 4 weeks left. Raj has zipped through on audiobook. I've been reading in copy. I remember loving this book 10 years ago when I read it the first time. I still love it. It grew on me immediately. I'm flying through this thing. If you want a quick read before the show even starts, I guarantee you will tear through the 700 pages of this book so fast. It's a great read.
Yeah, and in fact, I've been communicating with a lot of people via Twitter. Coach Marcus, who was not sure if he wanted to be part of American Gods. He's like, I don't really know if I'm going to watch this or not. I said, hey, download the audiobook. Just give it a shot. He finished it before I did. He said he's so excited for this show. And believe me, if you've seen the news reports that have come out of South by Southwest, American Gods took the convention by storm. It was the talk of Austin. I think they've finally nailed it. We were a little apprehensive about Starz taking on the magnitude of a story like this, but so far, Gene, like you said, they seem to have really nailed this story. And if you like the story, if you've read the book or you listen to the audiobook, it's an amazing story. Old gods versus the new gods. I'm really super stoked for this.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you read it or listen to the audiobook, if you get the Mr. Wednesday character, even in the first couple pages, try to imagine anyone other than Ian McShane doing it. He is so perfectly cast for this role. It's going to blow your mind. Yeah.
I thought Ian McShane read for the audiobook. He did not. It's just an actor who sounds like him. It's all I can think about. The actor's almost perfectly cast for this show. So we're really looking forward to that. So we're going to do a preview show for American Gods. So please subscribe to that. And then of course, On the Throne, which will be our Game of Thrones podcast recap show coming in July. So that's what we have on the horizon for Shat on TV. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Please be sure to tell a friend, and we will see you next month. Take care, good night, and good luck.